Alright, I'm back. Bastiani here, music producer. Y'all know what it is. Back with new video. Topic today: repetition with variation. Uh, Mostly something. So I'm coming from a music background, and I was reading up on this, or seeing a video up on this, in terms of music. And if you play any music, if you play any instrument, if you play in a band, if you do any kind of musical thing, you understand that repetition is part of music, because you basically, in its smallest form and in its biggest form too. So what I mean by that is mostly it, if you don't have any kind of pattern, there's nothing to latch onto. So there's no real repetition there. So for example, in music, you have stuff like beats and bars, which are basically just measurements of time, and that repeat themselves. And usually things will repeat within those things. That's how you make something, that's somewhat cohesive at all. If not, you don't really have music. You have noise, and that applies in the smallest form also. So if you look at basically any noisy type of sound, if you look at that sound wave itself, for example, if you just take your phone and you record outside, then this outside noise, which is basically just a whole mix of a bunch of different sounds coming from a whole bunch of different places, and in the end just creates like a big band of frequencies. It basically just covers like most of the frequencies, which is what we call white noise. White noise is all the frequencies at the same time, basically. And that's not what we call a musical sound. That's what it is. It's noise. So you have noise, and you have more musical sounds. And when you look at like the sound wave of noise, what you'll see is that it's a very ecstatic, erratic wave. It's kind of jumping up and down all over the place, and it's got no real pattern to it. And that's what we identify as noise. When you have something that is somewhat musical, you have something a little bit more musical, a tone that's more musical. What you'll find is if you zoom in on that wave of sound, it's got a pattern to it. So if you look at one of the smoothest sound waves you can have, which is what we call a sine wave, it's basically a smooth curve down, smooth curve up, smooth curve down, smooth curve up, and they're going down as much as they're going up. The amplitude on both sides is the same, and that's what creates the smoothness, is that there's a pattern, a set pattern. And then you have other different sound waves which are also smooth and musical, but in their own way. The sine wave is usually what people consider the smoothest sounding, or you could say the most musical sounding in that regard. But the thing is that type of stuff applies to everything. It applies to everything. And what's important is to understand that repetition is good. It's the start, but then you have to. It's repetition with variation that usually brings good results. So if you only have repetition, then you have something that's a little bit too monotone, you could say. Maybe a little too boring. It obviously depends on the field that you're in. If I stick to, for example, if I stick to music, if you only have repetition, for most people that gets a little monotone. You won't really want to be listening to the same thing. For example, the same 4-8 bars over and over and over and over and over. with no change whatsoever. Um, but where things get interesting usually is when you understand that um, you basically want to keep on repeating the same thing over and over while varying things. And the way you do that, how creative you can be with keeping it the same while changing it. Um, Usually, the better results you'll get. So that sounds a little bit like two opposites. But when I talk about repetition with variation, I'll stick to a music example. So, for example, you have let's say you have a bar loop, and you got some chords going, the same chords for 8 bars. I don't know. You might have like 4 instruments going on at the same time, and they're playing the same pattern for 8 bars. Now, for example, you have a solo piano in there or something doing like a melody line or something. So repeating with an example of repetition with variation would be a simple example would basically be you repeat that same pattern in the next 8 bars. So you have like your original 8 bars, then you have your next one which you're repeating the same thing, but maybe you're switching to 2 of those instruments. One that was playing the original melody line, and maybe another one that was playing something else. You keep the same notes. Everything is playing the same thing, but you're switching. The instruments are changing. What is playing what changes. So, you're keeping the same thing. There's still the repetitions there. There's still the cohesiveness, but the things are still varying. There's still a lot of variation in there, and there's a lot of different ways you can approach it. But that's how you kind of want to be looking at it. You want to keep the same idea, but evolve it over time. And that applies to a lot of different fields. It can apply to a lot of different fields. And if you look, most people who are, somewhat successful in what they're doing, they kind of follow that formula. For example, I don't know, let's say you look at like a YouTube channel. Go look at your favorite YouTube channel, and it's pretty certain that I'm pretty certain that they're staying on the same topic all the time. They're repeating the part of the repetition they would be in would be they're repeating basically the same subject. They're probably repeating the same type of a whole bunch of different stuff that you might not be realizing. They're probably repeating the same type of thumbnails that they're using. They're probably repeating the same type of music. These things all tie in together to create something that's more than just the individual, what might be the individual little video. When you start repeating things, you add cohesiveness, and you add you're building on top of each other. Now, what they're varying in is probably how they're hitting that subject, what subtopic in that big general topic that they're usually talking about might be. It might be a different guest. It might be a different guest, but the whole concept of the show or whatever they're doing, it stays the same. And the more you can kind of apply this to all the different factors that are part of whatever you're doing, a lot of times the better the results are going to be. And let me think. I'm trying to think of something else, maybe another example. Oh, right. So Takashi Murakami, the Japanese artist, very popular, very like pop culture type of guy. You probably have if you don't know who he is, you probably recognize him through his little. He's got kind of his art symbol, you could say, his logo, which is the it's like the smiling flower with, it's called like a bunch of multicolored petals and stuff. It's like a very simple logo that he's been doing for years. I'm pretty sure he's been doing that for over a decade. And if you look at a lot of his art pieces, they involve that. Like, it's not something he did once. He's literally been repeating the same concept over and over. And that's had a lot of benefit for him, because now, what has that done? It's made that every time we see that logo, we know exactly who that is. Who made that, we know where that's coming from, we know what that represents. And if you would have moved on from that, if you would have done one of those and then never came back to it, you could say the value of that would be the value of that logo and everything it represents would be much lower. Be much lower. And how does he vary? Well, he's literally creating new art pieces all the time, but he's incorporating what he's already done once into all the other stuff he does after. And that basically makes it his it's his branding. It's his art brand, and you can recognize it wherever you go. Like, whenever you see any kind of piece from him, you know automatically it's him. For the most part. He does do some more he does a lot of stuff. He's a pretty prolific guy, but that was just an example of one guy in another field. But I mean, these are all over the place. And there's a lot, like, the whole topic of repetition with variation is pretty big. It's pretty big, because, like I said, it applies to almost everything you do. I don't know. I don't have that much to say right now about it. I'll probably make another video about it. These are really kind of off the top of the head. But just think about whatever you're doing right now. That's towards a goal or towards something you want to accomplish. God damn, some muddy ass here. This is the place I ruined all my shoes. I see. Yeah, whatever you're doing, just try to think how you can figure out a way to add some repetition in there, and how you can vary those things over time, or vary a part of the thing that you're repeating. Or choose what you can repeat and what you can vary. If you could know that in advance, like, okay, this is what's going to stay all the time the same, and this is the part that's going to change. And I know I'm using pretty general terms because, like I said, this type of stuff applies to a lot of things. So I have to be kind of general because, I'm not talking just for music or any other field. And yeah, just think about what you can do today to add a repetition, because repetition adds pattern, and as humans, we're just basically attracted to patterns. That's just wired in every single one of us. And that is why we're attracted to repetition. Because it gives you something to latch onto. It gives you a pattern to latch onto, whether it's a subconscious thing, when you're listening to music, or whether it's a conscious thing. We're just attracted to it. We're wired to be attracted to patterns. And on a deeper level, it's probably has to do with just like almost survival, because the unpredictable in the end is what is dangerous, and the predictable is always safer for the most part. But that's that is just me guessing to why we like patterns. I have no idea why, but I just know that we do. Everybody's hardwired to be attracted to patterns. Therefore, patterns means repetition in one way or another. You don't have a pattern without repetition. And then the variation is kind of just like the salt on the top, the little cherry on top. The spice, what adds something different, what makes it interesting to come back to. So just things to think about. I'm gonna keep on thinking about it too, and probably write down some stuff so I'm a little bit more clear on my ideas or whatever. Because like I said, these are off the top of the head. I don't really come on here and I don't come on here to act like I have all the answers and I'm just trying to like teach or something. That's not really how I approach it. I just kind of approach it like whatever I've been thinking of and trying to maybe apply. I'll make a video about it, speak about it, and if anyone can find anything else that might be useful, then good. If not, then no problem. We keep it moving. So yeah, that was it for today. I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'll probably will make another video on this when I'm a little bit more clear-headed on the subject. And yeah, I think I'm good for today. This is me, Bastiani, music producer. I'm out. Peace.